Everybody is totally happy. I don't know how Dante DiVincenzo feels because he's going to lose some playing time. But this roster, assuming that they can re-sign OG Anunoby, is going to be a very formidable one and a better one than it was last year, assuming that everybody comes back and they figure out what they're going to end up doing at their center position or their big position, whatever the hell you want to call it. They should be able to resign Hartenstein if they want to spend the money.
See, I think that's the one that's going to be very difficult to do.
Well, the other thing, too, is, all right, well, these are bit players in the bigger story, though. And then they got to figure out what they're doing with Mitchell Robinson. But, right now, coming off the bench will be Hart, will be DiVincenzo, assuming that they sign OG Anunoby and Julius Randle's back in the mix and everything. And you now have a very formidable second group of guys coming off the bench again.
Yeah.
Because remember, we saw these guys, we fell in love with these guys because of all the injuries that hurt the Knicks throughout the end of the season and, of course, the playoffs. And Josh Hart was somewhat of a revelation with the amount of minutes he was playing and everything else. He's not going to be playing that many minutes anymore. So and he probably realizes that, look, man, if we want to win a championship, everybody's got to shelve the ego. Everybody's got to come together. And what better way to do it than guys who have already won a national championship or a couple national championships together and know each other as well as they do and have had each other on podcasts and everything. I will say that, after signing Jalen Brunson and the way that has turned out and now adding Mikal Bridges, and let's see what they do with OG Anunoby. I can't believe that you trade away the pieces you trade away and then get him here and then not sign him.
Yeah, I think they're going to, and even Woj posted yesterday after this trade that the Knicks are prioritizing and are really, really wanting to and pushing hard to sign OG or re-sign OG Anunoby. So I think that will happen because they have the advantage with the bird rights, and they could go max if they needed to. They can go past the cap because of that, so they do have an advantage in signing him, and I think the way that this team is built and what they're trying to do to be able to build a team that will compete with and hopefully beat the Boston Celtics, you need OG Anunoby on this team. That is their vision. Their vision is to have Anunoby back, Bridges back, wing defenders, guys who can get in the face of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and you need both of those guys, not just one of them.
And guys who can shoot and guys who can score, who can also share the ball and also get the way that you want to play. And I'm sure Tom Thibodeau had a lot to do with this. It would be interesting. I'd love to know if Tom Thibodeau, and I'm assuming they are, Jay Wright are talking to each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got to believe they are. And waking up and being able to talk about this morning is the best part of this job because it's an excitement, Brandon, level that you're like, okay, here's an executive who has been quiet for, since he took over and has done nothing but acquire picks and has done nothing but move pieces around the chessboard, if you will, knowing that he's got a formidable group of teams in the Eastern Conference that, what doesn't he have that they have? And I think that this really gets them closer to Boston without question. You're still going to have to deal with Giannis. You're still going to have to deal with Joel Embiid and those guys.
Yeah.
And I do think that Orlando's a much better team than, and they're a rising young team. The other good thing about this is, again, the age, the contract, 27 years old, highly motivated, going to be fit in seamlessly with his teammates. This is about as smart a move as you can make if you are Leon Rose in the Knicks. So this is a 5-star move. I don't really care about the draft picks because the draft picks, you never know if they're going to turn out or not.
Well, the other thing is, too, that you would expect that the Knicks are going to be very good over the next number of years. So it's not like they traded away a bunch of lottery picks. And I do think that if this was the most attractive offer to the Nets, that Sean Marks can't be stubborn and can't not trade Mikal Bridges to the Knicks because it's the Knicks. He's got to get the best deal for the team, but it's going to be very frustrating for Nets fans to have to sit through a rebuild and see how Mikal Bridges is going to fit in here. Now, Mikal Bridges you got both sides last year. You got the, man, this guy's so talented, he might be the most talented player in New York stuff when he was playing at the highest level. And then you also got, man, when he was given the torch to be the number one guy on a team, he's not the number one guy on a team. So, but this is what makes this so great is the fact that he's going from a losing team to a winning team with his buddies, and he's not the number one option. And he plays every game, and he's 26 years old. And he's got a reasonable contract. I mean, it is the perfect acquisition for the Knicks. I just never thought it was going to happen. I thought you had Devin Booker was an option and seemed like that was a pipe dream. Then this Paul George stuff was circulating around.
So glad that didn't happen.
So that doesn't happen. And then when other things came up, like Donovan Mitchell, again, you were like, man, I feel like that ship has sailed. There was an opportunity. It's gone. And then also Mikal Bridges would be perfect, but there's no way that's going to happen. And it did.
There's a lot going towards Brooklyn, and it makes me feel like, remember when Brooklyn hired Sean Marks? You and I were not working together yet. And, he was making all these moves, acquiring all these draft picks. And I thought he was trying to do it the smart way, the San Antonio way, if you will, because that's where he came from.
Yeah.
And then, that was kind of working. And then if you really look at it, Leon Rose in many ways is doing kind of like what Sean Marks tried to do. It's just a question of the players that you're acquiring and how do they fit. So Sean Marks acquired, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant didn't play for a year. And then, Kyrie disappeared, and we had all this nonsense with Kyrie and everything else. And then they add, of course, James Harden, and you couldn't have asked for three guys to be more oil and water than those three guys. And then they bring in Ben Simmons after they get rid of Harden. And then, we all know the story of Ben Simmons and what's going on with him. But this, from my perspective, is exactly what you want to do if you are if you're an executive for any professional team around here. Is you want to find the young guy that is going to fit in and is going to bring in a ton of energy and is going to love being where he is being sent to. And I think this is like about as perfect a fit as the trade for Anunoby was when he first got here, and we saw how well they played, and then how great Jalen Brunson has turned out to be. And the beauty of all of this is now Jalen Brunson doesn't have to score 45 points a game if they all can stay healthy.
Yeah, and the nights that he does, great. And the nights that he doesn't, you've got another option there. And the Knicks sat on these picks, and they waited and waited and waited. And then they had the haul to go and make this trade that nobody expected would happen. So I think this is one of those trades is like, how could it not work out, and knock on wood with everything, but how could it not?
Yeah, but it's New York, right? We
it's
all
the
know.
Perfect guy. He's the perfect guy for this team at this time. And I had gotten to the point where I was thinking, all right, I didn't want Paul George. I didn't think Devin Booker was coming. I didn't think Donovan Mitchell. So I was like, all right, you bring back the team. You bring back Hartenstein. You bring back Anunoby. Julius Randle's healthy. You get a role player here or there. Maybe one of these draft picks that you have at 25 and 26 or 24, 25, whatever it is, is someone where you hit and that guy's a big, and then he can replace Mr. Robinson, and you'll feel good about the team if they stay healthy, give the Celtics a run. That's where I was at mentally with this offseason. And now it's just completely like I don't want to speed up to get to the Knicks season by any stretch of the imagination. But, I mean, this is going to be – it's just going to be so exciting.
Well, the other thing, too, is now Tom Thibodeau, what's the rotation look like? Assuming everybody's healthy. Everybody needs time.
Yeah.
And, if the starters get off to a bad start, first 5 minutes of the game, he doesn't like what he sees, he's going to have a full bench to bring guys on to change the dynamic of the game, which is a big part of the NBA, as we all know. Having those guys that come in and play 19 to 20 minutes and spell the starters, if you will. And I feel like the Knicks have a group of guys that could start or they could come off the bench, and their experience that they had this past season is really going to make them. They're now a deep team, assuming they can keep OG Anunoby, which you have to do. I mean, you have to.
They have to. I mean, and I would be, because they've got the advantage in signing him, and they can go the max route, and they probably don't want to do that. And I understand in a perfect world you don't give him the max money, but you can, and you sort of need to. And in a way, OG Anunoby's got that leverage now to be able to get the max money. If you're ever going to overpay and you're ever going to do something you wouldn't normally do, and now is the time. For example, giving up as many picks as you did to get Mikal Bridges from the Nets, you had to do it. Now, to go that extra mile to make sure OG Anunoby's on this team, you got to do it.
You gave up two young studs and a draft pick, I think, to get on Anunoby.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're doing all of this. Unfortunately, there comes a cost, a financial cost in order to do that. And unfortunately, OG does have a history of being injured, unlike Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, who plays all the time.
But I think OG is at the right spot at the right time in his career. And, that's just part of doing business in the NBA. It's part of doing business in sports. Right time, right spot, right plays, you're going to have to pay him. That's all there is to it. And if you want to keep Hartenstein, you're going to have to pay him too.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably going to be, with his play last year and the Knicks having to pay OG Anunoby, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to keep Isaiah Hartenstein. And for him, he's got to cash in now with the way he played last year.
He played his ass off, man. That guy.
Yeah. And he deserves every penny he gets.
He was a hustler. He was defense. He did a lot of the dirty work. He wasn't a great scorer, but they're not going to need a scorer at that position. They're going to need a tough defender. They're going to need somebody who everybody likes and gets along with and doesn't worry about how much playing time. I mean, I think he proved to all of us that he's worth a significant raise. I don't know if he's worth this max money. I don't know about that. We'll have to see whether or not somebody goes out there and offers him that kind of money. But OG, unfortunately, for the Knicks, is the guy that you have to pay. That to me seems like that's a no-brainer, and if they can do that, and they will do that, I have no doubt that they won't do that.
Yeah, I mean, and they've got such a significant advantage for the rest of the market with the ability, with the bird right situation and being able to go the extra mile. Plus, I mean, OG Anunoby's a guy who's on a championship team. He's one of these guys that actually cares about winning, so much so that he was limping out there. Probably was a silly decision for him to go out there against the Indiana Pacers, but he did in a contract year. You don't normally see that.
Exactly.
And now they've added Mikal Bridges. They're a better roster, and he's probably thinking, hell, I don't want to go anywhere. I mean, I got a taste of the good life in a winning New York sports team, the New York Knicks resurgence at the Garden. We just got better. Where am I going to go? Charlotte? Houston? Hell no. I'm staying here. This is the place to be.
Yes,
Finally,
this would be the place to be.
This is the place to be again.
It is. And last night it was amazing when the trade was announced. I'm sure your phone was just going crazy.
I mean, yes. It
was just nonstop.
Around 9:30.
Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Can you believe
Right.
it? You know, and finally it seems like, you know, the executive Leon Rose and his team know exactly what they're doing. They've put this team together. It's been a fun team to watch. And I got to believe from a coaching standpoint, it's got to be great to go to work with guys that you really like and respect. And you're not dealing with like the egos, the attitudes, like, you know, I want to run practice, or I don't need practice today, or I want to, you know. I just think of the difference between he and what like J.J. Redick is going, you know, the baptism on the fire that he's going to feel out in L.A.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks have built a basketball team the right way. They've got the right coach. I mean, Leon Rose, after that offseason, I mean, I said this throughout the season, after that offseason where they completely botched with Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier.
But I feel like they got stuck, though, there.
Yeah, but I just remember
got stuck.
How bad it was, and then him sitting down with Mike Breen after the season, and he was hemming and hawing and humming. I was like, man, this guy, we have another one of these. You know, this guy's going to flame out, and he's done nothing since that moment that I have disagreed with. Not a single move have I disagreed with from that point on. And the first move he made in that offseason after that disaster of Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier was going and get Jalen Brunson.
Right. So, I mean, you recognize, but when I think back 2 years ago, I think about how they got stuck. They just got stuck. And they had to add something, and these were the best guys that they could add, and it was unfortunately it didn't work out well, especially for Kemba Walker. You know, you wanted him to do well here, and it just didn't work out. So, and I think those guys, when you look at their age, and then you look at this, and you look at the upstart Knicks and the way that they played in the playoffs with all the injuries, and then you add another piece to that that's a part of that national championship pedigree, and he's like you said, 26. He's 27 maybe?
Okay, maybe just turned 27, yeah.
Yeah, I just, it's like the perfect thing that I always talk about, trying to find the guy that's in his mid-20s that does have some experience, that is a winner, that is going to come in, and he's not going to rock the boat. He's just going to add another oar to the boat and is going to be a part of everybody, you know, swimming the same way or rowing the same way. That kind of analogy. To me, it is such a no-brainer and such a great job by the Knicks. I was at first I thought it was fake.
Really?
I did. I was like, you got to be kidding me. The Nets are doing this. But then again, I don't really care what the Nets are doing.
Yeah.
I've never cared about the Nets. The only time I ever cared about the Nets was when Dr. J was on and they played in Long Island. That's the only time that I had any interest in the Nets.
Well, yeah,
with the Whopper Billy Paultz.
Right, and of course...
And John Williamson, the Hammer.
I will admit, I mean, I had interest in the Nets when Durant, Kyrie, and Harden were here because I was rooting against them so hard. And, I mean, I dressed up like a leprechaun that day. I hated that team. I hated them. I hated that team.
And it turned out
I hated those fans that were calling here and rubbing it in our face. Oh, you know, they chose the Nets. They didn't choose you guys. Oh, the Mecca, blah, blah, blah. All these Net fans that came out of the ground that are now burying themselves underneath the soil once again. So, hey, tough. You had your shot. You blew it. And now we're here. We
right.
outside.
Dudes, dogs, and damage.
Yes, and bridges.
And domination.